Well, hello. Hi, my name is Matt. I want to welcome you all here to our project management webinar today. I want to thank everybody who's here. Appreciate you joining us. I know that you are all very busy and you have lots of other things that you probably should be doing, but we thank you for coming here, and we will definitely try to make this a valuable time for you to learn how to use some Kanban techniques to manage the projects at your MSP a lot better. We are, if you haven't been with us before, then you might not know, we are actually a unit. TopLeft is a unit within an MSP. So, we really understand the problems that you face, and we've tried some of the things that you've probably tried before to make your projects better. And so we're going to be sharing the things that we've learned that can make projects better at an MSP. To give you, we're going to give you a framework to deliver the projects on time, on budget, with less stress, and with the team that you have today. So I'll explain how we do that, and then if you want to stick around, I'd be very happy to show you the software that we have built to make the techniques actually possible. To make them easy, so that you can save time while you do that. So I'd be happy to share that with you. We also have a little promotion, a special offer that we can that I'll explain at the end, just as a way to say thanks for coming with us today. And yeah, so we'll do that at the end. Also take some time to answer any questions that you have as well. So I wanted to do a little tech check. Find the chat section in your Zoom chat, and let's see. Type in your name and your company and your city. I'm just curious. I want to see where people are from today. While you're doing that, I'll introduce myself a little more. My name is Matt Fox. I am the VP of the TopLeft unit here within our MSP. I've been with the company and some associated companies since 2010, I think. The MSP has been around since 2007. We're in the Vancouver, British Columbia area. And I've spent 10 years involved with project management in a variety of contexts, like software development, DevOps, sales and marketing, and customer success and whatnot. And over the course of my time here with TopLeft, I've talked with hundreds of MSPs about their struggles with projects, and we've seen the good and the bad and the ugly with the projects. So we're going to teach you what we've learned from some of our own practice and some of our own study here at TopLeft. Okay, so yeah, keep typing in those names there. Appreciate everybody who's here. We got Tony Lewis from NetReady in Los Angeles. Welcome, Tony. Jamie from Wingswept in Gardner. Jamie, welcome you from Bloomington. Steve, hey, welcome in Chilliwack. Steve's a member of our team here. Dana in Atlanta, hey, welcome. You can still, everybody else who's here, you can still type in your name. And yeah, welcome here. So yeah, let me share again. So just a little bit more about us. This is Kirchhoff Tech, and yeah, let me explain a little bit about the problems. Like, why did we end up building out these Kanban boards? Well, got a confession. Like, our project management was pretty bad. We had too many tickets started but not finished. In fact, at one point we had like 400 tickets open with only 10 technicians, so that's not too good. The projects didn't progress. We couldn't tell anybody what was close to being complete. It took a long time to close those tickets. Customers felt neglected. And when that happens, everybody feels siloed, right? There's not really any teamwork because everybody's just kind of heads down working on their own stuff. So it affects that. And we the PSA ConnectWise we used is just slow, not very friendly. We even had enough data, right? The projects and the tickets were all tracked in ConnectWise, but it was just no help in terms of actually understanding where are our projects at, and being able to look at them and understand them in a reasonable amount of time. And that's the problem with ConnectWise, and we get the same the same exact problems that we hear about from Autotask users as well. So here's another thing to put in the chat. I want to hear what if you could summarize in one sentence, what is the biggest problem that you feel managing projects in your PSA, whether that's ConnectWise or Autotask or something else? Like, you're all here because you have you want to do something better. So why did you come here? You know, what is a project problem that you want to solve by being here today? Just put that one sentence in the chat, because I'd love to hear that. So while you're doing that, let me tell you, we knew about Kanban Kanban techniques from software development. You know, we had done some software development, and so we are aware of Kanban techniques, and we thought, well, maybe this could help with some of our MSP projects. And you know what? We tried it, and it works pretty well, actually. We've made real improvements, and you know, obviously, we're all very busy still, but we feel a lot more under control. And you know, we understand our work, and our customers are happy. So yeah, we consider it a good success. Yeah, so we'll teach you what we use, how we actually do that in Kanban. And again, after that, I'll just explain what we can offer for the software to help you with that, whether you're a ConnectWise or Autotask shop, and have a special offer to help you get started well with that. So Jamie, thanks for tossing that in the chat there. He was looking for progress on, yeah, understanding the progress on the project on one hand, and then engineer scheduling. So that's something that we hear from a lot of MSPs. Actually, I kind of assume that's what everybody is. Everybody can share that pain. And by the way, we're going to record the webinar. It's being recorded now, and we will follow up with a link to the recording. We'll post it to our YouTube channel, and so you can share that. You can come back, listen to certain parts again, or you can share it with your colleagues. So I always appreciate that. So let's get into it. What is Kanban after all? You may recognize a board like this. Like, this is basically the simplest possible Kanban board you could have. Some columns that represent the stage of the work, and those little boxes there represent each work item. It's kind of pretending like these are colorful sticky notes on a wall. So, you know, work would start in a to-do stage. When someone starts it, it's doing, and then when it's done, it's done. So this is pretty much the simplest Kanban board that you could have, but this is only part of it, actually. It's the most visual, most well-known part of Kanban, but it actually, there's a lot more to it. It actually goes back to Toyota automobile manufacturing in the 1940s. So you know, even if you've just heard about it, it goes way back. These are not new ideas. They have to do with the ideas have to do with efficiency, reducing waste, and then representing work visually. Again, actually, that's what Kanban means. Can means visual, and ban means card. It's about managing one of the ideas is about managing the work rather than the workers. You know, like if you come in from an environment where you're putting, in order to manage what the engineers are doing, you put work into their calendar, then that means that you're focusing on the workers themselves. But what Kanban does is, rather than focusing on the workers, it focuses on visualizing the work itself. And that's usually helpful because it, well, for a variety of reasons, but one is that that's what your customers actually care about, right? They want their work done. They don't care what your engineers are actually doing. They just want to know about that their work is getting done. So that's one of the ideas. It's called, you know, pull versus push, because engineers can, yeah, like, you don't direct their day quite so precisely, so they are free to pull the work to themselves when they're ready for it, instead of you you know, as a project manager, pushing it to them by putting it in their calendar. Like I said, Kanban is pretty widely adopted now in software development, and it's also becoming more well-known in other industries. Like, as an example, Trello is probably the most well-known Kanban app, although they don't actually call themselves necessarily Kanban, and they just, but that's what it is. You know, sold this years ago already, actually, 425 million for this, for the sale for the Kanban app. Asana is another project management tool. You might have heard about that a couple years ago. It went public. So these are, you know, and these are not directed at any particular industry. These are very, you know, widely used apps. So Kanban is becoming much more widely used, you know, throughout all industries, based on what we can see. So some of the reasons why you do it, you know, it allows you to see the work in progress. Basically, that's the things that you've started already. And when you can see that, then you can limit it. That makes you a lot more responsive. It can stop work from falling through the cracks because you have now a clear visualization of all the work that's going on. And so you're not as likely to just forget about it. lose it within the PSA. It can improve the flow of the work, with by allowing you to identify and address certain bottlenecks within your team. Very hard to do just with ConnectWise or Autotask. It helps you stop feeling overwhelmed once you start to make these improvements. Helps you stop feeling overwhelmed, your whole team as well, and it's really good for communication within your team, because you can use these boards to actually talk about your work. Everybody gets the same view, and everybody understands. Another thing Kanban emphasizes is not making huge changes all at once, but more in the just like small manageable changes to implement things. And so like as a specific example, that could just be adding the Kanban board to your work. You actually don't change anything about how you work. You just first step is you visualize it on the board, and that's already a bit of an improvement. After you do that, then you can go and actually adopt some of these other practices, like what I'm going to explain today. And implement it in multiple stages instead of one big thing all at once. So who's this for today? This is for MSP project managers. I assume that's why you're here. that's probably you. You need practical steps, not just concepts. There's actually a lot of material that you can use, learn about Kanban. Lots has been written about Kanban, but very little of it is specifically about MSPs, and definitely not about project management. So even if you did a lot of reading about Kanban, you'd still be maybe struggling to figure out, okay, how does this actually apply to me today? But I'm going to help you with that, because this is specifically for you. It's for typical MSP stuff, like 5 people working on 20 projects, or even a large MSP, 25 people working on 100 projects could work well for that. It's not a complete methodology, right? I'm not saying you need to throw away everything that you may have learned, Project Management Institute stuff. Like a lot of that stuff is definitely still going to be relevant. And also, it's not for like a huge individual project. So, if you got 20 people working on a single project, it's not for that. You're going to need more methodology for that. But for what MSPs do, this is going to be really useful. Okay, so let's get into it. We call this the Project Productivity Planner. Just a way to remember this. It is a cycle. So that's what I'm going to be explaining today, is the project management cycle here. First, you identify the projects that you have. You're going to break down the work of the projects or a part of the project. Then you estimate it. Then you assign it. And then you're going to be monitoring the work. And you can do each of those stages from a Kanban board. So each, speaking in terms of a cycle, we're going to go through each of those steps and then start again. So it's a cycle. So how long? First of all, like how long is a cycle? If you are doing it in, there's a methodology called Scrum, which is like similar to Kanban in a lot of respects. They're both considered agile methodologies. Scrum is quite prescriptive. If you did want to do Scrum, you would probably want to read more about that, because there's certain things that certain meetings it calls for example. Also, it calls probably the most distinctive thing about Scrum is that it defines cycles called sprints. Usually, it's 1 or 2 weeks. Those are most common choices. Basically, you plan for each sprint, then you review what you did in that sprint, and then start the next one. So it's very strict cycle there, where 1 or 2 weeks, and you might choose that if you want more predictability. Like you want to be able to, as a project manager, you want to be able to tell your salespeople and your engineers and your customers and so on, look, this is the work that we've planned for the next week or 2 weeks or whatever your sprint length is. Okay, so if you want that predictability, then Scrum is really useful. Kanban is a little different. It doesn't call for a specific cycle frequency. Actually, what you're doing is you're just kind of continually doing this work. So you might choose that if you want more flexibility. In order, like specifically, you might do it if you're just you're constantly being bombarded with different demands, and the demands on the project team are always changing. And that's okay. I mean, if that's the environment that you're in and you want to be able to react to that, then Kanban can be really good, because it's totally fine if some work, new work comes in and it, for whatever reason, it needs to go to the top of the list, and it interrupts everything that you were expecting to do. But Kanban says, hey, that's okay. This is about flexibility and being agile. So that's what Kanban calls for. So those are two different flavors. What we'll mostly talk about here is Kanban, but all, like, the whole cycle overall can apply to Scrum as well. So the first stage there within the cycle is to identify the projects. Okay, so right, because obviously we can't do too much if we don't know what we're supposed to be working on. So make sure we don't miss anything here. We need to know about it. A project is anything driven by you. It's contrasted with reactive stuff like help desk. If a customer comes in and asks you for something and you got to get it done you didn't know about it until it came in, and it needs to be done in the next day or two, then that's reactive help desk work. So this is not what we're talking about. Projects, you're the expert. You plan them out. They have a scope. Probably multiple engineers working on them, and the customer has an idea of when you're going to be ending that. Obviously that's a project. Keep in mind, you do need to include your internal projects. So for example, if you are you're migrating it to a different RMM, for example, your project team's working on that, you need to include that, because that's going to have an effect on how much work you can do on your client projects, right? So you are looking at your entire project portfolio here when you include both client and internal work. So, okay. How do we use Kanban for this? We would make a lane in Kanban terms that's called a swim lane. And we just make one for each project. So if we looked and we found, okay, we're doing 2 projects right now. I mean, I'm sure you're doing more, but just for the sake of simplicity, let's say we're doing 2. We have a CRM implementation and an email migration for a couple of different customers. All we do here is we prepare, we just make a lane here. It's, you could do this on your wall. You could just put up some sticky tape, some painter's tape or whatever on the wall to kind of make the lines there, and write on some sticky notes, hey, here's the title of the project. And then you got your, that's all you got to do for that step. Pretty straightforward. So the next cycle, next stage within the cycle is to break down the work. So here, here's where you would make the tickets that describe the work. If you're doing your work in the PSA, this is when you make all the tickets or the tasks that make up that project. So how much do you do? You want to do it for the next major phase or milestone of the work in each project. And you want to plan out that whole milestone at a time. So, this could actually be the whole project all at once if it's a small project, but if it's a larger project and it has a larger phase, a number of phases within it, then you only need to do one phase at a time. And not plan out the entire thing, because that's not necessarily agile. And I'll get to why that is in a moment. So who needs to do it? Okay, so as a project manager, you don't actually need to do all this work. Someone, you're just responsible for ensuring it gets done. So whoever needs to do this is someone who's familiar with the tech issues. So an engineer, or maybe you come out of a technical background, so you can do it, and that's fine. But definitely you shouldn't be doing this part if you don't actually know what's going on in terms of the technology. So if you need to get help for that, then definitely do so. The important bit here is not to miss anything. Like this is the in my experience, this is the easiest way to blow up your project budget, is if there's some bit of work that is necessary and you should have known it. If considering you're the expert on this stuff, you should have known it at the beginning, but you didn't actually write it down anywhere. It got missed. Turns out it's inevitable. You got to do it in the middle of the project. And so that's the biggest way to bust your budget there. So definitely make sure you're thorough on this stage. The reason for doing it, one of the reasons for doing it phase by phase, or milestone by milestone, is that if you're in the mindset of thinking about everything that needs to happen for us to deliver this milestone, then it's easier. That makes it easier to make sure that you're thinking about everything and you don't miss anything. So as we break it down, I wanted to give some tips on what do we actually use in the if you're using ConnectWise or Autotask, what like how do we do it? What fields do we use on the tickets? Okay, so some of them are obvious, like you're going to be using the summary or title. The description on the tasks you're going to use. The due date you can use if there's a constraint imposed from outside. Okay, like some people I've seen have used the due date to actually manage the work. I mean, I don't know. The project manager looks at the due date, and if it looks like they're gonna miss the due date, then they gotta go schedule the work or whatever. Don't do that. We're not going to use the due date for managing the work. We only want to know if there's like, I don't, the project needs to be delivered on a certain date because the next week there's a conference or something. Like the conference isn't changing the date, obviously, can't move that. So it's definitely got to be done. You could use, don't use priority. That would be rare in project work. Priority is more for help desk stuff, so don't worry about the priority. And other fields that you will actually use. What I mean is, don't get into the habit of using a whole bunch of fields that you're gonna, I don't know, like the PSAs offer more fields than you really need. Out of maybe like categorization or like type, subtype item or whatever. Like you can use those, but only use those if you actually like run reports on them later. You don't want to just go be in the habit of setting using those fields if you're not actually going to make use of them later. Okay, that's just a waste. Okay, fields that you should not set is the start date. Okay, because this is that means that you're pushing work to an engineer. Say it needs to start on a certain day. That's pushing the work. Duration is also a form of pushing the work. It starts on a certain date and it lasts for a certain time. Also, do not set the budget or estimate or story points. Story points is a Scrum thing that comes later. We will do it, but we'll do it later in the cycle. And also, you're not going to assign it to anybody just yet, because again, that comes in one of the later stages of this cycle. Okay, so another really important part. This is really important. Is thinking about the ticket size as you break down the work. So I actually have this discussion with MSPs pretty frequently. Is like we don't know how to. We don't know what's the best practice for how big to make a ticket. Okay, so let me help you with that. A ticket should be a unit of value for the customer, okay, and with minimal dependencies on other tickets. So kind of like something that can be added or removed or changed for the client that doesn't depend on too much else. So it could be like, say you're doing a cloud migration project, you might part of the email migration might be moving the virus scanning part into the cloud. Okay, that could be a single ticket in that project. I mean, and that's useful once you can tell the customer, okay, like we haven't finished moving all of your email to the cloud, but we have moved the virus scanning part to the cloud. So that's useful. So that would be an example of a pretty good ticket. Ideally, the ticket can be done in one sitting by a technician. That's another guideline, meaning the engineer can sit down and they should be able to expect to finish that, if they don't get distracted with something else, they should be able to just finish that work up and then, send it to complete and they're done with it. They shouldn't be expect to run into problems there that stop them from doing that. If it's, and just be clear, what I mean there is you may have a practice where work gets reviewed. Okay, so we're talking about like a handoff to a further part of your workflow or of your process, right? Where maybe an engineer does some work and then it goes to another engineer and they just do a quick check on it, like peer review, and that doesn't apply. What I mean is that's totally fine. That is like one series of work moving to a new part of your workflow. It's not that you have like two technicians that have to actually do part of the different part of the work on the same ticket. If you did, that might be better as two tickets, but that doesn't apply when it's like one unit of work and it's moving through your workflow in a certain way, like to a review stage. I would say err on the side of, if you're not sure, err on the side of two small tickets. Most MSPs have problems making tickets that are too big. So err on the side of two small tickets. However, it is definitely possible to make them too small. You might have made them too small if an engineer sits down and instead of doing like one ticket of work, they actually do like 3 or 4 or 5, and they get to the end and they're like, does it even matter which one I put my time against? If that happens, then you may have made those tickets too small. And definitely at most 2 days of work. We never want to see more than 16 hours logged on any ticket, because then it's just too big and there's too much chance for things to go off the rails before anybody knows about it. Like you could you could easily have 16 or 20 or 24 hours on that ticket before anybody really notices, and by that time it's way too big. So keep it to 2 days. Unless it's something that's really experimental and the customer understands that you think it's experimental, then that doesn't apply. But almost always 2 days of work. Let's talk about how to communicate the scope. Okay, this is really important. The description and the scope must be very clear so that you and the engineers and the client have the same understanding of when it's done. We do not want to have a discussion where we look at, you as a project manager, engineer, and the client all look at some ticket and you've all got a different idea of whether it's done or not. We definitely don't want that. So we want to make sure it's documented very clearly to know when is this ticket done. What we've actually done for that ourselves is we explicitly write in the description of the ticket, or you can also put this in the checklist of the work if you want to use that in your PSA. We write done when, and then just put a point form checklist, and that describes. It can either be in the terms of explicit things to do. You might give that more to a junior engineer. A senior engineer might plan it out, and a junior engineer can do these very explicit things. Or it can be done when, more in terms of business outcomes. Hey, done when virus scanning is done in the cloud or whatever. So it can be fairly simple, and again, it can be documented in terms of the business outcomes. But in any case, it's got to be documented. So how do we use Kanban for this part of the process? You are gonna, as you break down the work, you're gonna write one card per ticket or task, and then you're gonna rank them. Okay, so here we've got 5 tickets for the CRM implementation. We've got 4 tickets here for the email migration, and you stick them on your wall if that's what you're using, the physical boards there, and you rank them. So these aren't just a bucket of 4 or 5 tickets in any random order. These should be done in the order that this work needs to be completed. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. Okay. The next, so yeah, that's it for this stage, breaking down the work. Then we estimate the work. Okay, that's the next stage in our cycle. We are going to enter the budget or the estimated hours, also story points if you're using that in Scrum, for making an educated decision about prioritizing that and assigning the work. Right, it's pretty important to be able to know how much work a certain ticket is, so you know how much might get done in a week or so. Let me just mention hours versus story points. Other people sometimes call it complexity points. That has to do with the Scrum methodology. Hours is exactly what it sounds like. How many hours it's going to do that to take to do the work. Story points is a little different. It is estimating the complexity of the work, and the benefit of that is that it doesn't matter who does the work. Someone should be able to look at the work, and or I should say, multiple people in your team should be able to look at that work and then give it a kind of a relative value against some of the work that you've been doing historically, to say, okay, this work is twice as complex as some other work. Okay, so you give it twice as many story points. The benefit of that is that it doesn't matter who does the work compared to if you're estimating hours. There's a lot more that could be said about that. I don't want to say too much. If you find a book about Scrum, then definitely you'll read about that technique. You want to estimate the work that needs to be done soon. So if you're doing Scrum, that's at least 1 future sprint's worth. Okay, because you need to be able to commit to a certain amount of work, so it has to have some estimates on it. So you need to do 1 future sprint's worth. Kanban, you don't need to do that. You just need to keep the queues from being empty. You don't want to starve the engineers of work, right? So that means that you need to keep an eye on that and make sure that you're keeping their queues not empty. So who does this? Again, probably same person who's doing the estimation or the breaking it down, an individual who could do the work. So could be you if you come from a technical background. Otherwise, pull in one of your engineers to help with that. Now, why is it actually separate from the breakdown stage? Okay, because we could do it all at once, but what we like to do here is delay it, because it delays it until all the likely scope changes are done. Like basically, if we do it as late as possible, it means that we can learn from all of the things that went before. You know, maybe if something turns out it was more complex than you thought, or less complex, if you're lucky, then you can use that to estimate the work initially, rather than having to go back and adjust your estimates that you already did, which is waste. Okay. So that's why we do it at the last possible moment. If you find out when you estimate that work, it's probably 2 days or more, then you got to break it down into 2 tickets or more. Here's how you would use Kanban for that. We would move the work that needs estimation. First of all, we'd pull that off of the backlog column here. We just pull it over to the needs estimation column. Okay, and then we know that it's either whoever's got to do that work, whether it's some engineer or it's you, needs it's waiting for some estimation, and it can stay here for a while until until you need to refill, make sure that the ready column doesn't go empty. That has to do with doing it at kind of the last possible moment, so that we have learned as much as we can learn about that work, or the prior work of the project. And when someone does it, they put a number on the card, could be hours, could be story points, and they pull it over to the ready column like that. So then then we got a pretty clear view of where is this work in my workflow. Okay, so then we get to the 4th stage of the cycle with 5 stages. This is where we actually assign that work. So this is the trigger to make sure that work actually gets done, where you put it into a queue where an engineer is actually going to work on it. So what we want to do here is you want to minimize the constraints in terms of having individual engineers that are the only ones familiar with a certain technology or a certain client or a certain project or whatever. The more that you can do to make sure that any work in your any work in your project portfolio can be done by anyone on your team, the fewer bottlenecks you're going to have, because then you can take any ticket and assign it to any engineer, and that's fine. You have a bit of a problem if you have certain clients or certain technologies or whatever, and you know that you can only assign that to your one senior engineer. That's not a, that's a bit of a concern. That's going to lead to the senior engineer becoming your bottleneck. It's quite common in MSPs. So yeah, you want to try to avoid that, sometimes by training, by writing good SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that junior engineers can do more, because the instructions are all laid out. We say a lot more about this actually in our service webinar about this sort of concept. So if you want to know more about that, join us again next month, and I believe we'll do the service-oriented webinar, and we have a bit more to say about that. We want to know now, which tickets do we assign? Well, we look at what are some approaching tasks, due dates, for the whole project, for a certain milestone, or if, maybe there's only one particular task that has a due date coming up. You want to know about that. So that's the work that you want to assign, so that it starts to get done soon. And also the overall project, the size and the importance to your own business, meaning to your customers. But in terms of your own business, you consider that. If you've got some like, for example, maybe this would be where if you have a due date for an important customer of yours and it's coming up soon, you obviously you emphasize that work, and maybe you got to put some work for one of your own internal projects, got to put that on the back burner for a little bit until you get things back on track. So who to assign to it? Okay, like I said, maybe there are some technology, client, or project constraints within your team, so you can only assign certain tickets to certain people. You need to consider that. The current load of the person, of the engineer. So obviously, if you want to kind of even out the load so that nobody has too much work and some people have too little work. And you also need to consider, obviously, some whatever non-project work they're doing. Could be if they're also on help desk duty, or maybe you're sending them off to do some training or vacation or whatever. So obviously, you do need to consider that sort of thing as well. Okay, so how to use Kanban. So notice we've shifted things now. Okay, we no longer have the project swim lane. So now you're gonna have like a different part of your wall if you're using a physical wall, and you're gonna shift things around. Now you're gonna make lanes by your different engineers. So in our example here, we have a lane for Terry and a lane for Nicole, and we can really easily see uh, um, how much work each of them has. And because we've written the estimates on the cards, we can in fact see not just the number of tickets, but like the overall amount of work that's waiting for them there. And again, you order it. So it's not just a random list that they can pick from. You actually put the most important stuff that you want them to do first. You put that at the top, and then we'll talk more about this. But that's the stuff that they will do first. Okay. Yeah, so that's it for assigning work, and then we just get to the monitoring stage. So this is where the engineers actually become part of the cycle and they do their work. So all the prior steps are kind of setting up what we want to do, and now this step is actually getting the engineers to do what we need done on the projects, and also for you, it's monitoring for things that aren't going as planned. Okay, making changes to make sure they get back on track. So this isn't like like the other stages where you do it once and then it's done for that cycle. Like you actually kind of stay here in this part of the cycle. The I-beam there is kind of, that's the initials of the stages of the cycle there, a way to remember it. You kind of stay in the monitoring stage until you want to get back and do the start the cycle again with identifying the projects. So this doesn't need to take too much time. We want to manage by exception, right? So the things that are going really well, you don't need to worry about them too much. You want to be aware of the problems so that you can get those things back on track. So what do we actually look for in terms of this work once the engineers start it? We look at the due date versus the progress, meaning if the due date's coming up and the ticket's still not done, we want to know why. The hours logged versus the budget or the estimated hours on that work. We want to know if things are too much time is being spent on that for whatever reason. If it's spending a long time in a certain column, like it's in the we have an in progress column when the engineers start the work. If it spends 7 days in the in progress column, then that's not what we would expect. So we want to know why. A long time without a time entry or a note, in your PSA. Bottlenecks you would want to look for, meaning maybe one engineer has 20 tickets on the go and other engineers have 3. So the engineer with the 20 tickets is going to be the bottleneck. Things that need to get escalated from the engineers, for whatever reason. And so those are things that you want to watch for, because that's going to require your some work from you to address those. Here are some ways that you can address them. Okay, so sometimes you can just reassign work to a new engineer. That's useful. If there's a bottleneck, you can look through, so this engineer who has 20 tickets, look at those 20 tickets and see, can any of that work at all be assigned to a different engineer? And if so, go ahead and do that. You can suspend making new assignments for an engineer. So if your engineer has 20 tickets, you can say, okay, we're not going to assign you any new work for a while, so that you can just work on those things and get them done. You can split up the ticket, so that can help if the ticket was too big. Maybe you end up with maybe one part of the work was kind of unexpectedly complex, and so you want to you can actually complete the original ticket and then put the work that was incomplete because it was more complex or whatever. You can put that in a new ticket and then kind of let that go through on its own again through the cycle. Sometimes you just need to cancel the work, right? Maybe for whatever reason the business case is gone. Maybe or the client can just ignore you, and you don't have the information you need to finish that ticket. So you could maybe just need to cancel it. So those are all things that you can use to do that. So how do we actually monitor here? So notice here, we've got a bunch more columns. So previously I just showed you the ready column, but actually we have a lot more. And these columns all refer to basically what is the next stage of this work. And this is probably this would be a complex one. Like you'd probably start out more simple without a QA, without an acceptance stage. I'm just kind of showing you what you could do to map out your whole process. But what's more common is just ready. Scheduled is for things where the next step happens at a certain time of day. So it is in the engineer's calendar, usually because they have to go on site or because it's a scheduled outage, network outage in the evening or something like that. Waiting means is waiting on somebody outside of the team, usually waiting on the customer, but definitely in our environment today, maybe you're waiting on some parts. I've heard it's hard to get a hold of hardware. So it could be waiting on a vendor somehow. Started, that's another name for like in progress. So that's where an engineer would put that work when they actually are working on it. This is, and it's not actually just the stuff that they're working on right now, like at this very moment. It's the stuff that is in their court. Well, on one hand, they've already started it, and it's in their court to do. So if they come in the morning and they think, okay, what are all the things that I've started and that are still waiting for me to do something, all of that should be represented here. Then maybe you have a QA stage, maybe you have a client acceptance stage, finally it gets to completed. Okay, so it can map out your whole process here. So what are you going to do? So you're going to be looking at some of those exceptions that I mentioned, over budget or the due date's approaching or whatever, and you need to mark these cards somehow. So if it's a serious problem, like it's way over budget, then maybe you mark it with a red mark somehow. Okay, so that's a concern. You can also mark it with an orange mark, maybe if it's not a real problem yet, but it's getting close. Like for example, the due date's in 2 days and we're still working on it. Maybe that's some not necessarily an issue, but it's some concern, so you want to mark it that way. So you can do that, and then it makes just clear for everybody where's the problem work. What should we be focusing on to make sure that we're getting things done that we need to get done. Now notice that we don't need to put work into engineers' calendars just for the sake of managing it to make sure it gets done. The Kanban board gives us enough visibility and control over that so we don't have to put work into the calendar. We still put some work into the calendar, like when it needs to be coordinated with somebody, like when they have to go on site. But if it's other than that, we don't put it in there. This is enough to communicate to the engineers like what's the most important work, and for everybody to see what's already been started, what's waiting or blocked or whatever. Yeah, so that pretty much wraps it up for how you as a project manager can use Kanban boards. Yeah, so we talked about how there's no, we don't schedule it into the calendars. Yeah, so that's it. You identify projects, you break down the work, you estimate it, you then assign it, and then you monitor it as the engineers are working on that. So just a little bit more about how the engineers work. So once work gets into their swim lane, they work those tickets from the farthest on the right side of the board, and then they work to the left. Okay, so that's what we call the pull, where engineers, like you as a manager, don't actually tell an engineer to start a new ticket, unless maybe it's an emergency thing. But most of the time, you're not telling them to start. You're setting up the queue that they can pull from when they are ready for new work, meaning they've completed everything else that they can work on. That's what maintains a low work in progress. Working from the right side of the board allows the engineers to focus on what's already closest to being complete, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're completing the work that we start. So if we focus on any work that's complete, then, or I should say closest to complete, meaning closer to the right side of the board, then that's how we can do that. And when they're ready for new work, they go to their own swim lane and they pull from the top of the ready column. They just pull over it in progress, and then everybody knows that they're working on that, and they work it till it's done and then put it into complete. Obviously, the engineers are going to be keeping all those records up to date, right? They're updating the tickets with notes and whatever, entering time and so on, like all the things that you're regularly doing in that regard for taking those notes and keeping the tickets up to date. You still do that. Okay, so that is Kanban and what you would do with that. Why don't you type in the chat? What would you say is the biggest aha moment for you? Is there anything in there that you're like, okay, this really solves a problem that we thought that we have. If we just do this one thing, then that'll entirely solve whatever what a certain problem that we have. So go ahead and put that in the chat. I'd love to hear about that. Don't think too much about it. If you can't think about it, just type digesting it. If this has been a lot of information, and I understand if it is, just type digesting it in the chat. So that's the method. Part of the problem, though, oh, I should actually say some of this is other MSPs have gotten a big benefit out of doing this. Like here's an actual example of an MSP here in Australia, James at Kodo. He said we tracked some of his work as they used some of these practices, and in 3 weeks they had 43 tickets that were assigned, and they got that down to 25, and stalled tickets went down from 35 to 17 or 16 or so, all in 3 weeks. So that demonstrates what you can do if you use some of these techniques. Okay, however, I'm not going to try to pretend that this is all easy, especially, if you want to maintain this on a wall with sticky notes or whatever, that can be a bit of a challenge, because, or just doing it without, the PSAs, as you know, are pretty weak at showing you this information that you need to know. It takes a lot of clicks around in the project module. You don't have the visualizations. Obviously, you don't have the Kanban boards there. You can't see the multiple projects at once. You don't have easy monitoring of the bottlenecks or neglected work, things that are sitting in one column for too long. And you don't have any way to actually rank these tickets to communicate to the engineers what's the most important. And you could do some of this with a third-party project manager, Trello or Asana or whatever, but then you lose all the benefits of integrating it with your PSA, right? That's a big reason that you have the PSAs, because it's all integrated. So I want to just tell you what you can do with the Kanban boards that we built in order, because we recognize these problems and we said, okay, we don't want to have to make these trade-offs. Like, we want the best of everything. So we built out these Kanban boards. So they're for visualization, easy management, so you can see multiple projects at once, both at the ticket level and at the overall project level. Makes it really easy to identify bottlenecks and neglected work. You don't waste time double entering your data. Everyone in your team can see all the work in the same way, and you can order the tickets with a drag and drop, just like you can with sticky notes. And it also can just help you work faster throughout the day by reducing the clicks, because you just have all the information you need right in front of you. Avoids miscommunication because everyone sees the same data. You can, hey, in this tool, you can even assign and unassigned members. You can dispatch to the calendar. You can enter your time and notes so that the engineers actually do it. And so I just want to show you some of the screenshots of what this actually is, and what does a software do with the data that you have in your ConnectWise or Autotask, and so you can see how it helps. So here is an example of a very basic Kanban board. We have the columns going from left to right. They map out the entire workflow, whether it's a help desk or a project workflow. All this data comes out of ConnectWise. The columns are mapped to the ticket statuses, which you already have. So it's very easy to set up, and you can actually, so it visualizes it for you, but it's also any changes that you make to the data in here will go straight back to your ConnectWise or Autotask. So in fact, you can drag a ticket from one column to another, and it will go and change the ticket status for you. So wherever you're looking at the data, it's all up to date. It will do exactly these project visualizations that I've been talking about. It will do that for you. So here's an example. We have, here a swim lane showing our project tickets for the CRM implementation project. It's just done it all for us. Email migration project. Here we can see the details. This one's a third project for a different customer. So you can see at a glance all of the detailed tickets, where they are in these stages. So you can say, like, you can actually identify very easily, hey, this project is not really on track, and it's because of this and this ticket. And so we're working on those ones to get it back on track. You can also do it with the engineer swim lane, with one lane for each engineer. Like we have here a swim lane for tickets that aren't assigned to any engineer. So that can be a bit of a problem sometimes, or at least at later stages of the cycle, it's a problem. And we can see work that is assigned to all of our other engineers, Terry and Joseph and Nicole and so on. So it actually makes it easy to see who's got what work, who's free to take on more work, and if you're wondering, what's Terry working on? Well, it's all right here in this column, in this swim lane here. Very easy to see that sort of thing. which of course you can see in ConnectWise or Autotask, but it's a lot of work. You can also add some other filters. Basically, you can kind of specialize these boards so that you can you can say, I want to see the project work that's just assigned to a single engineer. So this is an example of that. It's showing that all these are tickets that are just assigned to a single engineer. That's really useful. You know, maybe you have like one-on-one meetings with your engineers throughout the week, or like once a week or whatever. And this is a very useful view for that, because then you can talk about just, you know, what are they doing, and but still talk about it in terms of the projects that they're doing. You can also kind of flip it around and be looking at the your engineer swim lanes, but look at it for just a single project. So this would be where you are thinking in terms of a particular project that your team is working on, but you got multiple people working on it, and you want to know who's working on what for this single project. So this is a view that you would use for that. So it's very, very flexible. It can show you all the information that you need to know just by the variety of views it offers. We also talked about identifying some of the problem work, like for example, if a ticket's staying in the in progress start column or for too long, you know, for 5 days, it'll highlight it for you there. If a ticket's coming up due soon, then it can make that a warning, right? So it's just all automatic. Like, you don't have to actually go and identify the problem work, it identifies it for you. And by the way, the engineers, when they are working from Kanban, they will see all this stuff too. And that can get you really save you time, because they'll see these problems and they'll go fix them on their own without before you ever have to get involved. So it can definitely help you make better use of your time. This is an example of a project board. So these are now we're seeing not our project tickets, but these are actually our top level projects. So this can help you in planning as you ticket projects are coming in through your sales pipeline. They land there for you, and you need to go through a scoping or scheduling stage. You want to know, like, what projects do I have in which stage? So this is a board that can do that for you as well. You can even do swim lanes that are based on the estimated start date of the project as a whole. You do need to be planning out things to so you, for example, you can kind of tell your salespeople, okay, like, we can start new work on such and such a day, but don't be selling anything prior to that date, right? So this is a view that can help you with that sort of thing by grouping the tickets based on how they are estimated to be starting, and give you some visualization into that, which the PSAs don't offer at all. So lots of project managers have used this. Here are some of the things that they've told us. Scott here out of Computer Integration in Woodbury says, the big aha moment when I could click on the magnifying glass on a project to drill into the tickets for the project. Oh my gosh. Happy customer. Matthew here at Kaufman IT in Irving said, it's weird that this is the exact same data in a new visual form, but suddenly everybody knows which tickets should have been closed when they just didn't with ConnectWise. Sarah out of from Clear Guidance in Austin said, turn project management from staring at huge lists, it's impossible to prioritize, into visually digestible, very visually compelling information. Dale here said they shortened their project meetings by 50%. Similar here to what Steven said. Well, they even bigger savings. They had a 90-minute meeting that became a 30-minute meeting when they had TopLeft. So yeah, definitely a time savings, and yeah, so it lets you get on with your day and do all of your responsibilities a lot more effectively. Okay, so if you've stayed until now, I really appreciate it. I hope that you've learned something. You're still welcome to put questions or comments in the chat. Jamie, I appreciate you contributing that. You said what was interesting for you was push versus pull. Engineers are very pull focused, but I feel I lack control with just the ConnectWise project management module. Yeah, yeah, I can definitely understand that. The only way ConnectWise offers to help you with that is by scheduling things into the calendar. Which is that's actually a lot of work, and it's very fragile, because if anything changes, then you got to go and reschedule everything. So it can be a lot of work. But Kanban is what gives you the control over what your engineers are doing, because your workflow can be that you order the tickets and the engineers know that they go into Kanban and they work from the top of the list. And you are free to change their queue, the ordering of the things in their queue at any time. Right? The engineers don't even need to look past the first one. They just are always taken from the first one. So it's totally fine for you to go in there and reorder those tickets anytime you want. So you have quite a bit of control there. Yeah, anybody else can put questions in either the chat or the Zoom Q&A section. So let me explain what we have as help to get you started. We have what we call the Concierge Onboarding. So that is a 1-hour call to help you get set up with the first Kanban boards. Basically, I know that you're busy. You don't need another tool to learn. So if you just show up for this 1-hour call, then we will just ask you, what are you trying to do? Like, what questions do you need answered? How do you want to look at your projects? And we'll set up the boards for you. You don't have to prepare anything except have an idea of how do you want to be tracking your projects, including what we laid out here today. So that's $299. We also offer what we call the completed ticket challenge. So that's a 3-week boot camp. It emphasizes starting work before finishing new work, right? So you can kind of maintain that low work in progress. A lot of MSPs, they have engineers and they've got like 10 or 20 or 30 things even on the go, and that's very difficult. If you assign something new to an engineer, you've got no idea when that's going to be done, when they've got that much on the go at once, right? So if you can get that down to 1 or 2 or 3, then they are less stressed and you have more certainty about when things can be done, and your customer sees that when a ticket is started, it's actually finished fairly quickly. So it's just better for everybody. But it's not very it can be confusing to know how to actually do that. So that's why we laid out this challenge for. It's for the format is for 3 weeks. You get emails with some video content for you for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Friday you come to a group call with all the other MSPs that are in the program at the time. So there's you can bounce questions off of them and contribute and tell what you learned and whatnot. So that's $399. Now, as a way to say thanks for joining us, I want to give you a break on that. Actually, we want to give you both of these together just for the price of the Concierge Onboarding. So I have a $399 off coupon for you if you sign up before June 2nd for a trial using this coupon, IBEAM 2205. So let me explain how you do that. You just go to topleft.team/topleft-trial and put in IBEAM 2205 as the coupon, and that would give you $399 off when you buy them together. So basically you just pay for the Concierge Onboarding and you get the completed ticket challenge for free. So let me pull that up here. Yeah, so you just go topleft.team, topleft-trial, then select your PSA, ConnectWise here, and then this is the one you check. This the CTC trial with the Concierge Onboarding. Click that, and then you get into our cart here. Let's see, you would, oh yeah, so put in, hang on, I think I removed something there. Let me try this again. Right, what we want to do is apply the coupon here, IBEAM 2205, and yeah, now we're just paying $299. Okay, so that gives you actually it's a 4-week trial, so that you have the 3 weeks to get through the completed ticket challenge content, and you get the Concierge Onboarding where we just get you on a 1-hour call and set up all your Kanban boards, and yeah, saves you a lot of time and gets you up and running real quick. So yeah, that is all of that is what we had to share with you today. So thanks to everybody who is has joined us, and we hope you learned a lot. I see, I think, a question. So let me find the questions here. And oh, it looks like someone just said Craig was from Denver. Okay, so not a question. Welcome, Craig. So while we wait for questions, let me just tell you some things that people have been concerned about in the past. Some people have wondered, do you have to make a whole bunch of changes to your ConnectWise or to your AutoTask in order to take advantage of TopLeft? So the answer is no. We know that you have put in a lot of effort into your ConnectWise or your AutoTask setup. Like these are big software packages, and everybody customizes them in some way, right? So we don't want to come in and say, like, in order to use TopLeft, you've got to change how you've done everything in your PSA. You know, that's not going to work. So TopLeft is very flexible. You're just adding to, you know, any customizations, any like automated workflows, any other third-party tools that you've already set up into your PSA. They will continue to work. You know, TopLeft is just something that adds on top. It just easy to set up, and you know, if it doesn't provide the value, then you just take it out, and you don't gotta go and put anything back. It just works with whatever you have already. Other people have questioned, like, do you have to license everyone in the PSA? And the answer is no, you don't. If you just have, you know, your one project team and you got a separate service team, then you're certainly welcome to just license the project, like yourself as a project manager, and then your engineers. Definitely, that's no problem at all. Other people have asked, how do you handle multiple people updating a status on a ticket? Like, are there conflicts there? Like, what happens if you got a couple people on a ticket and one of them is done their part, and so do they move the ticket over to completed? But that would cause a problem because someone else has some work on the ticket and they're not done yet. So that what we would say about that is we would recommend that you actually, that's a good example of a ticket that should be separated up into two tickets because of that confusion. So like TopLeft doesn't have a great way to deal with that because you know, your PSA doesn't have a great way to deal with that. What you really should be doing instead is separate that work up into two tickets, and then you can track those separately. It's better for everybody because it's better, you know, it's better for you because you can see exactly, you know, which bits of the work are done or not done. You can see, and it's better for the engineers because they can see exactly what they are assigned to and responsible for and nothing else. And yeah, so it's better for everybody if you do that. Okay. Well, I don't see any new questions or comments, so I want to say thank you to everybody for joining, and we hope to see you soon. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can always send any questions you have to our email at either sales@topleft.team. That would be help to get started. If you are using TopLeft and you have some, you know, kind of more technical oriented questions, then help@topleft is the email that you would want to send to. And yeah, we hope to be helping you soon. Once again, if you want to get that promotion, sign up and get the help to get started. That's at topleft.team/topleft-trial, and click the CTC trial. And the promo there is the IBEAM-2205. Okay, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.